So, here we are guys, ending the decade with the final film of a trilogy that never had a chance of living up to the hype that surrounded it for almost a decade, just like how we started the decade with the final film in a trilogy that never had a chance of living up to the hype that was built around it for almost a decade. Yeah, and they say that corporate filmmaking and billion-dollar franchises aren't consuming the film industry. Thank God the indie film scene still has a fuckload of creativity, otherwise this entire art form would seem like just as much of a joke as the world of high art.
This banana duct taped to a wall.
Anyway, hi, my name's Neo, and I'm a filmmaker, and here we are approaching the year 2020 and still making sequels to a trilogy that came out over 40 years ago, even though pretty much everyone is in agreement that nothing will ever surpass the original, and there's basically no point in continuing to make any more of these movies, and yet we still keep paying to see them over and over again, and now we're forced to deal with these godforsaken films from now until the end of time. Congratulations, everybody. This shit is your fault. I've said before that Star Wars should have just ended once Lucas called it quits because without him and his eye for innovation, the series just doesn't really have much of a reason to continue from a filmmaking standpoint. But hey, I'm not gonna talk shit about him selling the franchise to Disney because he made bank because of it, and that's a move that anybody should be able to respect. I'm not gonna talk shit on Disney either like the millions of Star Wars fanboys online have, because I feel like they pretty much accomplished what they set out to do, which was make money. And they did. A fuckload of it to be exact. But all at the sacrifice of creativity and innovation. And this latest film in the series is no exception. This third film, like the two that came before it, were pretty much just your average American popcorn films. Thematically basic, but with a storyline that's easy enough for younger people that aren't as familiar with the franchise to get into, with great performances, intense action sequences, and a nice happy ending that leaves the audience feeling sweet and satisfied. And I wouldn't expect anything different. After all, you can't really take big risks when you're playing with a billion-dollar audience. Well, I mean, you can, but yeah, it's Disney. Come on, they know better. If you're going into this expecting some grand epic finale that ties up all the loose ends and successfully draws the Star Wars cinematic universe to a close, then you're gonna wind up being disappointed. And I feel like that's kind of what happened to this new trilogy as a whole. The same thing with the prequels. People just go into these films expecting way too much, whether it be expecting the new films to recreate the same feeling as the old films, or whether it be people expecting the new characters to be just as well written as the old ones, despite the fact that these films are now being written by completely different people. This is where a lot of the criticisms of Rey being a Mary Sue come from, or complaining about the drastic change in Luke's character. And while I do agree that Rey is a Mary Sue, I mean, so? Yeah, I mean, it kind of makes her unrealistic as a character, but this is Star Wars. Since when does realism matter? Hermione Granger was a Mary Sue too. She was smart, pretty, heroic, and had next to no character flaws, but everyone still loved her. As far as people criticizing Rian Johnson for what he did to Luke Skywalker, I guarantee you that Rian Johnson had almost no say in the way that Disney wanted Luke to be portrayed throughout these films. Disney had a plan for Luke before Rian Johnson even signed the fucking check. I mean, everyone was complaining about how Luke is like this bitter old man now, and how the Luke Skywalker that we know would never be so callous and neglectful to his responsibilities as a legendary Jedi, but, I mean, why? Literally, the events of the first films took place over 40 years ago. You don't think that maybe Luke changed his mind and maybe reevaluated some shit during that long-ass period of time? At least they gave us a bit of a backstory as to why he's so bitter and indifferent now. They could have just left us in the dark and been like, oh yeah, Luke is just this bitter old guy now that lives on an island and drinks blue milk out of an alien cow tit. Not only that, but they actually draw Luke's story to a pretty successful close in this most recent film, and literally it wouldn't have worked if they had changed anything about his depiction in the previous film. Now, this isn't to say that the movie is flawless. Obviously, there are some critical things that can be said about the film. You could say that putting Palpatine back into the mix was shoehorning, especially since they never really explained why he's alive in the first place.
Dead? I would like you to be as well.
I guess we're supposed to assume that because he's so powerful, he's basically become immortal at this point, but yeah, he just kind of shows up out of nowhere, and they really only question it for like half a second before just being like, well, I guess we gotta defeat him now. Not to mention that if the villain's only purpose in this story is to restore power to the old villain from the previous stories, that's usually a sign that you should, like, write a better villain. I don't know, maybe do something with that Snoke guy, since he was such a useless nothing burger of a character. You could also argue that Chewie's fake-out death scene was just kind of a pointless fake-out that didn't even last long enough for it to be an actual fake-out. You could say that Rey's relation to Palpatine is kind of pointless and has no bearing on her motives as a character. You could say that Rey and Ben's relationship, if you can even call it that, is really out of nowhere and also pointless. You could say a lot of things really, but in the end, why would you? The bottom line is, Star Wars is a kids movie. A really big, really expensive, really well done kids movie. Disney is trying to capitalize on marketing this series that is as old as dirt to a younger generation, and kids don't really care about how faithful Luke's adaptation is to the original series, or how dynamic of a character Rey is, or how realistic Ben and Rey's relationship is. These films are here to be entertaining to as many people as possible, and they do a pretty good job at that. Now, I'm not saying that since it's made for kids, the quality doesn't matter, because to a certain degree, kids need to be at least infatuated enough to want to go and see the next one, and to want their parents to buy merchandise and whatnot. But at the end of the day, before you make your 20-minute long video essay about why Rian Johnson is the worst director ever, or how Daisy Ridley is a horrible protagonist, or whatever the fuck, just remember what these movies are. A bunch of dumb laser battles in space. And arguing about the authenticity and motives of these characters makes just about as much sense as arguing over the authenticity of the characters from Diary of a Wimpy Kid. And on top of that, it makes the series really unapproachable to people that have never seen Star Wars, because the hype surrounding Star Wars movies is bigger than the movies themselves. My biggest problem with Star Wars has never been the movies, but literally everything else. Okay, that's not fair. Look, if you want some loser with too much free time to sit here and give you a long analysis about the Star Wars cinematic universe and how these 3 films play into it, then you're gonna have to look somewhere else. I will always be unnecessarily harsh to the people that put these films on a pedestal, in the same way that those same people are unnecessarily harsh to the directors of these films when they fail to live up to their ridiculous standards. But if you want someone to talk about what these films are like from a filmmaking perspective and what kind of impact they have on the industry as a whole, then who better to listen to than someone that actually makes films rather than just talking about them. Overall, I'd say that the new trilogy is still the weakest of the 3, simply because George Lucas's creativity and innovation is solely lacking from these newer films, but as a movie, these films are no more offensively average than your typical Marvel film. Star Wars will never live up to the expectations that have been set by its fan base. But then again, neither did Jurassic World. Neither did The Hobbit. In the age of the internet, it is now easier than ever to let the malformed opinions of people on the internet build up unnecessary hype and praise around certain films just as easily as it is for them to pick apart other films and change how the general public sees them. This video, and to a certain extent my entire channel, is my attempt to combat that. So, if you like what you see, then consider subscribing. I'm always writing, shooting, and editing brand new videos all the time, so there's always something new to look forward to.